This is episode number 68 with Kristin Helms. Welcome to the Good Life Coach podcast. I am your host, Michelle Lamoureux. The intention of this show is to awaken you to your fullest potential. Join me each week for inspiring interviews to elevate an area of your life, as well as interviews with women entrepreneurs who are creating success on their own terms. Each episode provides actionable tips to guide you to design a life you love. Hey there, it's Michelle, and welcome back. I am so happy you are joining me today. So if you've ever wondered whether you could make a career as a writer or want to get published in a magazine or online somewhere, then you're really going to love today's interview. Joining us is Kristin Helms, who's the author of 2 books. Her first, From Boardroom to Baby, that came out in 2018, as well as the author of Grace and Oak, Inspiration in Poetry and Photographs, which comes out March of 2020. So I invited Kristin on the show to talk to us about what it takes to create a career as a writer. And what I really appreciated about Kristin is how methodical she was after she left the corporate world and realized that she had a book in her that she wanted to share. She focused on building a platform, creating community, really creating a first-class book proposal, and getting published in other places to create credibility. She really focused not just on the creative process, but really on the business side as well, which I think is often a missing component for a lot of us creatives. Kristin really does share so many great tips in the interview today, as well as resources. So I know you're going to enjoy today's conversation. Let's get into the show. Hey, Kristin, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we've tried to connect a few times, so it's fun that we're finally sitting down to have this conversation. You have a really interesting background, and both as an author and as a entrepreneur. So I think it's cool. But today we're going to focus on your writing and community building. So I would love it if you could kick it off with just taking us into your story. Since you've worn so many different hats, like take us where you think is a good place to start.
Great. Yes. So I guess I'll start with my past sort of corporate career life that I had pre-babies. So I did marketing and PR for Hyatt Hotels after I graduated college, and I kind of grew with that position for a while. And when I had my daughter in 2013, I wanted a more flexible schedule. And so I left the corporate world to stay home with her, and I became a stay-at-home mom. And during that transition is when I first had the idea for my first book, From Boardroom to Baby, because I just thought that transition was a lot harder than I expected it to be.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going from like a high-paced corporate position to you're at home with a tiny newborn, it's just a change of pace, and, you question your self-worth and, what am I doing? So things like that. Of course, I was so grateful to be able to stay home with her, but also all these feelings that I had to acknowledge. So I started an innocent little mommy blog called Mommy Project San Diego. And I just sort of started writing about early motherhood, kind of the fun stuff, like, what should you pack in your diaper bag? But also, some of the more bigger topics, like, acknowledging that the transition from the boardroom to the baby life was difficult, and the stay-at-home mom life and things like that. So I did that for about a year. And then I launched a bigger publication online called Tribe Magazine. And I actually launched that with my 2 sisters to start. And it was a women's online magazine that really just took off and grew. And it started just with lots of different topics that women would be interested in, anywhere from like fashion and home decor to motherhood to recipes. We really just did a whole bunch of things. And then, as our evolution continues, my sisters actually decided to go back to nursing school, both of them. And so they kind of said, we can't do Tribe anymore. And I really, thought about like, well, what did I want to do with Tribe? And again, my heart was always in kind of like the motherhood corner of that site. So I transferred Tribe into a site for moms. And I knew that I couldn't do all the content for it by myself anymore. So I opened up the doors to contributors. And that was looking back, that was just such a great decision because I met so many great writers and moms, and we really built a community for moms on that site. So I would publish probably about 10 articles a week from different writers, myself included, about all different topics in motherhood. And we really just got into everything. And I really liked like the heartfelt stuff, like the pull on your heartstrings type of stories and like the personal essays and things like that. And it became just such a great community. And from there, I thought, well, why don't we bring this community into real life, into a group that we could meet once a month and actually, get together face to face. A lot of the writers obviously weren't from San Diego, where I'm from, but I built it's called Mom Tribe San Diego. And so I started connecting with moms locally. And so that was kind of like the spin-off networking group of Tribe Magazine. Wow. So that was kind of, my job, my job that I was doing. Meanwhile, when I had Tribe Magazine, I was also putting together a book proposal for From Boardroom to Baby.
Okay. So that was always a part of the plan while you were developing this.
Exactly. Okay. So I knew, and I guess I should kind of back up and talk about that. So, the reason I wanted to start a mommy blog and I wanted to start Tribe Magazine and things like this is because I really wanted to write this book, From Boredom to Baby. And I had done a bunch of research about writing a nonfiction book, and publishers, I knew I wanted to go with a traditional publisher and hopefully an agent. They really wanted you to come to them and pitch them, a great book proposal, but also they wanted to see that you had a great community and that you were involved in a bunch of different things and that you could sell books basically, right? Because you had this kind of community and network. So that was kind of like the leading force behind everything I was doing. Really, really pushing Tribe Magazine, really building a local community. I also would submit my articles to bigger publications, just trying to get my name out there in many different ways.
And how many women did you have as part of your Tribe Magazine?
So Tribe Magazine, we had hundreds of thousands of readers worldwide.
You did? How long did it take to build that?
It was, we were lucky because we had a bunch of essays on the site go viral. And, I attribute a lot of that to Pinterest actually.
Okay.
So Pinterest was our number one traffic generator.
Wow.
Followed by Facebook. So I just think the more writers I got involved in the site and the more like really heartfelt personal stories about motherhood that we were sharing, I mean, moms just loved that and they really grasped onto that.
That's amazing. And were you looking to get people to sign up? Like, were you asking them to join the community? How did you actually track how many people were coming to the site?
So just through the back end, it was, we created the magazine on a WordPress site. And so I was just looking at all the statistics that way. And then, we also had like a newsletter that, people could sign up for to stay informed of like as soon as we posted an article. But I think it also helped, building that community that, not only was Tribe Magazine sharing the articles on our own channels, the writers who were coming in were sharing their articles to their own networks. So, you had this great kind of organic growth, that comes with involving a lot of different really talented writers.
So from inception to hundreds of thousands of women, coming to the site to read these articles, how many years did that take?
Let's see. So we launched Tribe 2016. So that was a good 2 years. It was a good 2 years to get to that final point, I'd say.
I'd say that's pretty impressive. I mean, 2 years to get hundreds of thousands of women coming. And were you making money from it, or was that never the intention?
It was never the main focus. Again, kind of my main focus was like, let's build this community so I could, well, first of all, I really wanted to connect with other moms, and these stories we were telling were so important. And secondly, I really wanted to write this book. So everything I was doing was kind of like for the greater good of, writing this book, connecting with the community, and sharing these amazing, amazing stories. But I think that, and I'm sorry, what was the question that you just
Well, I was
asked
wondering
me?
if you made
Yeah.
money, because part of what I was
Oh, money.
thinking
Oh,
of
that's
is when
right.
you
Yeah.
leave a corporate job, like I did, when you're making
Yes.
six figures and you have really nice lifestyle, it feels good to make money for your talent and
Absolutely.
your knowledge, and then to choose to be home, which I also did with my daughter. And then to have the reward of that is amazing. But if there's a part of you that is really has a career path, like a very career
Right.
oriented mind, which I do, there's a part of you that feels like it's been put in a closet or something, that it's been tucked away and wants to have a voice again. And also that satisfaction of making money. And I think it was on salary.com. They said if women got paid, stay at home moms got paid to do what they do with the amount of hours they put in, it would absolutely be a six-figure job. But we don't.
Yes,
We get paid in love, which is
absolutely.
priceless.
Right.
We're neither of
Right.
us are going to say there's anything wrong with that. But for those women that are listening who can relate, that say, "Oh my goodness, I really need something for me." So I'm just curious if
Yes.
part of that was
So
also hoping to make some money doing what you were doing, because that's a
absolutely.
lot of time that you put in to build it in 2 years to hundreds of thousands of women, even if it was a collective effort with other women. So
Absolutely. So the site was making money. It wasn't anything compared to what I was making in my corporate job. But we had ad networks set up. So we used Mediavine on Tribe Magazine, which is a certain ad network, and then we'd also do sponsored posts.
okay.
So companies would come to us, and somehow we try to tie in like a great essay with a certain product or something like that. So I thought of creative ways of how to make money along the way.
Were you
Again,
incorporated? Because you had other women now, so this is an actual business endeavor here, right? I mean, it wasn't just a mommy blog that you were doing by yourself, or even
correct.
with siblings, which, now you had outside contributors. So how did you figure out how to structure all of that?
So, right. So I actually did pay all of my writers. So that was important to me as a writer myself because a lot of the writing that I did for other big sites, some I would get paid for and some I wouldn't. And it was always nice to get paid for your time and effort. Right.
Absolutely.
And so I thought, even if I could just pay these writers, I mean, I wasn't paying them a ton. But even if I could just, pay them a little bit for their time and effort and to make them feel like they're bringing home money for they're spilling their heart on paper. I mean, that's the
Mm,
least I could do.
right.
Um, so when you really look at the books of it, we were making some money, but I was also paying these writers. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not netting a lot in this
No,
situation.
no.
Yeah, yeah.
But your
So
gain was to get the following for the book anyway.
right,
So you had a bigger picture plan in place.
absolutely. And I 100% think that Try Magazine helped me get a book deal for sure.
Mm.
And that was kind of the goal. And along the way, it just so happened along the way, I loved running Try Magazine and I loved connecting with these moms. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to do this to get to this point. It was like, wow,
Mhm.
I get to do this to
Right.
get to my end goal.
Right.
That was really special. Yeah.
It's great. And so tell us about the mindset, though. So I think a lot of people do have the dream of writing a book.
Mhm.
You were very methodical about it, though. You knew that community would be important. Was that just part of your research in terms of, knowing that you wanted to go the traditional route and have the publisher and the agent? Um, you know, tell us about how that thought process worked, because I think a lot of people have the book and maybe just want to go pitch it. So what advice would you give
Right.
around that? Especially, so the first one was nonprofit. We'll get into your second book, which is a totally different area, which is what
Yes.
makes this sort of exciting to delve into. But what was the thought process like, Kristen?
Well, I think that, I just knew, if I wanted to go the self publishing route, I probably could have just written the book and published it immediately,
Hmm.
because I mean, actually, I don't know if I can even say that though, because you still, even if you're self publishing, you need a network to sell the book to and to get
Totally.
excited about and to help you spread the word and things like that. So actually I take that back. I probably, after doing research, if I wanted to go that way, would still have to like build a community and
Mm-hmm.
really put myself out there and things like that. So, um, for me, and I wanted to get agents' attention and publishers' attention. So I did start submitting my writing to bigger sites, which I think is another factor that really helped me get a book deal.
Mm-hmm.
So I made it one of my top goals. I remember, I think it was in 2017. I was like, I'm going to get published in the Huffington Post this year.
Mm.
I just thought that if I could get published in the Huffington Post, that would make me feel like a legit writer, A,
Mm-hmm.
and B, give me a little bit of clout that, my writing could make it onto such a big platform. And they had a really wonderful parenting column there. And they still do. So anyways, it happened. And Ariana Huffington, she replied back and accepted the piece. And
Nice. Did you reach out
um,
directly to her?
I did. And I know
Yeah.
it's changed. So Huffington Post has changed
Yeah.
since. Yeah, and I'm sure you're familiar. Because now I think, is it more of you submit? I don't know how it works now, actually.
I've
Um,
never submitted to them. I know that she gives her email out on podcasts.
yes,
So like I have her email. I've never written
yes.
to her. But she would say to people, and I think she's just very action oriented and would like respond. Like my husband was at a conference where she spoke and he followed up with her about something. She's like, "My darling Steve,
Yeah.
here's, like, I don't know." She's like, "I'm glad you liked the thing. Here's my assistant or something. Reach out to her. You should submit." It was just interesting. This was like a year or so ago too.
Okay. Yeah. She's very
So
open about it.
yeah,
Yeah.
she seems very open. So anyway,
Yes. Yes. So exactly. So it was kind of this. I still remember waking up one morning and I had checked my email and I was like, oh my gosh, Ariana Huffington wrote me back. I mean, it was pretty much like a form response, but it
yeah.
was like, you've been accepted. This piece has been accepted, blah,
That's
blah, blah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Well,
So,
because now with Thrive, I feel like I don't know. I think Huffington didn't it get acquired. I think she no longer running that.
I haven't heard the latest. For her Thrive, you're
Well,
saying?
I'm saying she's Thrive
Yeah.
is her main thing. But
Oh, her
anyway,
main thing. Yes,
yeah,
exactly. So I think Huffington Post, how to submit to them and everything has changed
that's
since
what I think.
2017.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
it's a little different. And I know she is focused really on Thrive. So, yeah, it's interesting. But anyway, so I just thought, okay, so I was submitting things to larger publications and obviously getting accepted in some, rejected in some. That's all
Mhm.
part of the game, rejection along the way, obviously. And so I really, at the end of it, with Tribe Magazine and all these different publications I had written for, I really had a really good book proposal to send
Mm.
out to agents.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop you there. So,
Okay.
two things. One is in terms of, and only because I want to help clarify with the women listening who want to follow in a similar path.
Yeah.
So, for the submission of the articles, how many did you submit
Oh my
per how
gosh.
many, just in case? Because I think it's helpful for women to
For
realize it's
sure.
not like, oh, yeah, I wrote to Huffington Post and I got that and then I got
Oh,
this.
right.
There's a lot of, tell us a little bit more on the rejection side. Like,
Sure. So, just an example for Huffington Post, I
yeah,
had submitted 10 essays
yeah,
over months and months, and one of those got accepted.
okay.
So that's just Huffington Post, and I think I got lucky with that. I mean, I don't want to call it luck, but
No, I'm
it's
sure it was a
you're not.
beautiful article. I'm sure it was meant to be there, so
Yeah, no, and it was nice, that they accepted it, obviously. But so, and for all the writers listening, I use Submittable to submit articles now to a bunch of different publications. I still use that platform. They post a lot of different opportunities in different categories.
mhm,
So it was funny though. The other day, I logged into my Submittable account and I was just scrolling through because you have logged everything you've submitted to different publications
mhm,
before,
mhm.
and it'll say rejected or accepted or in progress. So you can keep track of everything. And there were so many rejections. I was like, oh my gosh, look at all these rejections. Like I just kept scrolling, like rejection, rejection, rejection. And then every now and then, and accept, but oh my gosh, so much rejection. I can't even tell you a number. There's a lot.
So what is it? Submittable.com?
Submittable.com. Yeah,
Okay,
I highly recommend that to writers. Yeah.
okay, I'll post that in the show notes too, and then in terms of the agent, And,
Yeah.
so again, in terms of process, so you did your homework, you figured out how to do the book proposal. How did you figure out who you wanted to pitch to, and how many different pitches did you do before it was accepted?
It's funny. I did a Google search about literary agents who are interested in parenting books.
Hmm.
And I wrote down a few. I think I found like five that I really wanted to pitch, five agents.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and when you're Googling agents and things, you can, on their web pages, they usually list exactly what they're looking for. And that'll change from month to month, maybe,
Yep.
maybe a literary agent is looking for a parenting book now, but next month she's looking for a different nonfiction or whatever. So
Okay.
it's so good to check their websites and see what exactly they're looking for in that moment. And so I found, I submitted my book proposal to my top five agents who I thought really fit the project.
Mm.
Um, and I remember I got one rejection letter back almost immediately. And I was like, oh, here we go,
Yeah.
Uh, and then 3 days later, I got a phone call from my now literary agent, Jill Marcel. And
Mm.
she said, I loved your book proposal. I really believe in this project.
Mm.
I want to represent you.
What a
And I was,
great feeling.
uh,
Oh my
oh my
goodness.
gosh, I remember I was driving when I got the phone call, and I pulled over to the side of the road I was like, oh my gosh, it's Jill Marcel. And and she accepted me, and it was like we were off to the races. So
Ah.
so it was 3 days after I submitted my book proposal, and that is not normal. Like, I don't want people to think, I know writers who have submitted to so many different agents over years and years, but I really think that I did the hard work before submitting,
Mm.
and I think that's really the key here is to prepare, like over prepare,
Okay.
over
So what are some
prepare.
of the things you did? You built a huge community. So that, first of all, because I went to a writers conference last year in San Diego, actually, and one of the agents was saying that. She's like, having social proof that there's already an audience is so important these days. I mean, it's obviously different than before all this stuff was a big deal, right? I'm sure writers 20 years ago, it was not an issue, but now it
Exactly.
is. So you did that. And what else? What else? Like, how did you figure out how to do the book proposal? What did you use for
Okay.
resources?
Yeah. So it's important that I mention this too about the book proposal. I enrolled, and I think it was like a 6-week online class
Mm.
about how to write the best book proposal.
Mm.
And I did that through creativenonfiction.com,
Mhm.
or it might be creativenonfiction.org.
Okay. I'll
I
find it
forget.
and
It's,
list
it's
it.
creative nonfiction. Yeah. And I was in a wonderful class where they walked you through all the different components of a nonfiction book proposal
Mhm.
and how to put it all together, because I just had no idea. I
Sure.
was like kind of deer in the headlights. How do I even put this all on paper? And so I highly recommend that class to anyone who really wants to put together like a stellar book proposal.
Mhm.
Um, and so I came out the other side of that with a really great book proposal. And
Mhm.
in that book proposal, so for nonfiction, you usually have to have about 3 chapters written of the book,
Yeah.
plus a book outline. So each chapter needs to be outlined. You have to have basically the bones of the book
Yeah.
structured. So I had that. I had my 3 chapters, and then I had the proposal itself, which is really like a business plan for the book. So that was actually familiar to me coming from a corporate marketing background.
Mhm.
I
I
was
was
like,
just
oh,
thinking that.
it's like a business plan. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
completely. Because my background's in marketing too. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, this
Oh,
is
yeah,
like." Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
exactly. So if you kind of have the skills for that already, and
Mhm.
if you don't have a marketing background, again, I highly recommend that course
Mm.
through Creative Nonfiction. I just found that so helpful.
Thank you. I think resources are helpful, but really what I'm hearing you say with all of this is that you had the desire. You
Right.
were very methodical, you didn't just rush into it, and you set
Yes.
yourself up as best you could so you knew that you were giving it your best effort when you went forward, that you
Absolutely.
knew that you did absolutely everything that you could, and I think that's helpful, because I think as a creative, it's very easy to the creating is the joy, and so
Absolutely.
right? And so this part, the business sides can be not as exciting or something that, you maybe want to spend the time on, but I'm hearing from you that it's really important.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. it's kind of a pain, especially when you want like instant gratification, right? Like
Sure.
you just want to write the book or, publish it or whatever. But it's like, if you just, first like take the time to really prepare, and because you can only pitch it once to everyone. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like you can pitch it and then a couple months later pitch it again. I mean, you can obviously tweak it and try to keep making it better, but if you just start off with a really great product and
Mm.
then come across strong and pitching it, then I think you'll really find success that way.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So now I'm curious though. So did you identify as being a writer? Were you always a writer? Because you started out in corporate.
Right.
You decided to come home, and I mean, stay home, come home.
Yeah.
You
Come
decided
on
to
home.
come
Yeah.
on home. You
Yeah.
decided to be at home with your daughter. It was a conscious
Right.
choice, and we're fortunate enough to be able to do that because some women don't have that
Yes.
opportunity. So it's definitely a blessing. I felt very blessed to be able to do that too. But then, you had this book idea. I mean, were you identifying as being a writer? Has this been a part of your life for a long time, or was this something that kind of came to you later in life?
Absolutely. I've always been a writer
Mm.
since I was very, very young. I even I've sort of told this story on my Instagram a couple times, but I specifically remember my fifth grade teacher sitting me down one day after I had turned in a report and said, "One day you're going to become an author." And I remember his words
Oh,
just stuck with me throughout my whole life because I really wanted to become an author. That's always been a life goal.
can I just
Um,
give credit to that teacher? Because, I
yes,
think so many of us
yes,
have
right,
memories, even back as far as fifth grade, where you were not being encouraged, or
right,
somebody told you
exactly.
that your art wasn't as good as it should be, or whatever. So
And it's such
kudos
an
to that
impression,
teacher to
right?
see the gift in you and then also to share it. Like, I just got goosebumps when you said that.
Oh
So
my gosh, I know. And Mr. Skates, Sacramento,
yes, that's
California.
okay. Shout out to Mr.
But
Skates.
he and
Yeah.
I've actually, it's funny, I've tried to find him. I can't find him on social media
Oh,
anywhere, but I wanted
yeah.
to actually reach out and thank him because really
It
that gave me a lot
stayed
of
with you.
confidence.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful gift he gave you. I
Oh,
love
yeah.
that. So you've written obviously you were a good writer back then too then for him
Yeah, I
to see
mean,
that.
I guess as good as a fifth grader can be. But he really gave me the confidence, and all
Mm.
through high school, I always wrote. I never shared anything, or I didn't write publicly, but I have
Mm.
notebooks and notebooks
Mhm.
of my writing and poetry, and all the way to college. And I even when I got to college, I remember thinking like, okay, am I going to go down like the journalism path, or creative writing, or what am I going to do, what am I going to choose here, because I really did want writing to be a part of it.
Mm.
And I landed in a communication degree at San Diego State
Mm.
University because it was more
Yeah,
versatile to,
sure.
and I thought it'd be more lucrative, to be honest with you, because
Mhm.
you always,
Sure.
writers, it's very well known fact, unless you're like a New York Times best-selling author, like
Right.
every book you write, you're not making a ton of money.
Mhm.
So that was important to me to like support myself and make a career. So I did go the communication route and the marketing route eventually, but I never stopped writing throughout all of that.
Wow. I love that. And so where did the poetry come into play? So your latest book is called
Yes.
Grace and Oak. It comes out in March. So how did that seed get planted? How did this come to be?
So I've always written poetry. I joke that I was like a closet poetry writer because everyone looks at me, they're like, you've been writing poetry, and it's true. I have all these notebooks just filled with poetry, and I always just thought, I'm not a real poet, but I
Yeah.
like to string words together, and it's a lot of like soul searching type of stuff.
Mhm.
And I just thought, well, I'm not a real poet, but I just like to write it. And then for some reason, I got the courage to start sharing some of my poems on
Mm.
Instagram
Mm.
last year, maybe a little
Mhm.
over a year ago, so fairly recently. And people were kind of like, "Oh, this is," people were responding to it in a positive way, and I thought,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is maybe I am a poet, or maybe I could be, right?"
Mm.
So I started writing more, and the idea for Grace and Oak actually came to me because I was redecorating our living room, and I was looking for a coffee table book.
Mm.
And I really wanted to find something that I would actually read, or, because a lot of coffee table books, they look really good or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, but you never open them up,
True.
you never sit down and read them. Um, and I kept looking and I was like, gosh, they're either really pretty or they're good, something I would read, but they don't look really great. The cover doesn't look really great. So I don't know, I couldn't find exactly what I was looking for. And it just like hit
Mm.
me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, well, why don't you just create this book? That's going to be, in my head, I wanted it to be poetry paired with really beautiful photography.
Mm.
And it's so weird how it just ideas hit you like that, right?
Sure.
Like, and so I always say, like, if I have a new idea, I sit on it for 3 days because I have a lot of ideas and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them are very good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sat on it for 3 days. I talked to my husband about it, and my husband was very enthusiastic. He's like, "Oh my
Sweet.
gosh, this is your next project." And I was like, "I
Aw.
know it might be." And so I just thought about it, and on the third day, I was like, "Yeah!" Like I was so excited about it.
Mm.
Um, and so I contacted my literary agent first, and I said, this is kind of out of left field because I just wrote a nonfiction book for parents or
Mm-hmm.
mothers. So this is completely different. But what do you think about this idea? And she was like, I love it. Show me some pages. And I was like, oh
So
my
I love your
gosh.
agent. Sounds like you have a
Yeah,
really great agent because if she's
she's
open and says, I love it, she has obviously really good vision for possibilities. So that's
totally.
amazing.
And I love her too because she really loves projects that have to do with women and supporting women and
Mm.
empowering women.
Mhm.
And my From Boredom to Baby was about empowering mothers and
Mhm.
helping them through that transition and kind of find their footing and their confidence again in motherhood. Grace and Oak is similar in that it empowers women, but this time it's empowering women who are following their dreams, pursuing their passions,
Mhm.
kind of like striking, lighting a flame in these go getter women. And so she obviously loved that, those undertones. And so my best friend, who lives up in the Bay Area, is a really beautiful photographer. And I just knew immediately, I was like, I got to bring Meg Stone into this. Um, because we've been best friends for a long time. Like I
Mm.
trusted her. I knew it'd
Sure.
be a seamless project, to work with her on something like this. And so I remember it was funny. I sent her a quick text message. Like I was loading my kids up for school to drop them off. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to send her a quick text message to put this on her radar.
Mhm.
And I just said something like, would you be interested in doing a book, like a coffee table book with me? It's going to be poems and photographs. I was like, let's talk more later. I'll call you after I drop the kids off. Moms are always double tasking.
Yeah.
Or she just wrote back, yes, exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. Like there was no talking about it. Like she was on board,
Ah,
and that's why I love Meg. We've always supported each other in our
love it.
creative endeavors and
Mhm.
things like that. So she was just on board from the beginning. And so we put together sample pages for our literary agent. And she loved it and she started shopping it around to publishers. And we got a lot of we got a lot of rejection from publishers, which is
Mhm.
always part of the same thing with From Boredom to Baby. Because your agent will shop it around to so many publishers, and you're gonna get a million rejections, and then but you just need one yes.
You just need
So
one yes. No,
just
let's stay
one
on that. That's great. You just need one yes.
yes,
That's great.
exactly. And that's Meg and I. We would always laugh too because we can't. It's funny. Our literary agent would just forward us the rejections, just kind of like, okay, this one. And so we're seeing too what all these publishers are saying about our work, like really picking it apart. And
But Kristen,
that's
oh, go ahead,
yeah.
please.
So I'm just saying, that builds thick skin, and I think it's important to note that you do need thick skin in this industry,
Mhm. But
because people
also
are going to pick it apart. Yeah.
totally, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but also with poetry, did you do research to see if there was a market for that, or did you just kind of go with wanting to do it and your agent was like, "Great," and so you just went with it? Because, I think poetry it's such an intimate
It
form
is.
of writing. I do poetry too, but nothing I've ever shared with anyone, and
Oh, that's
it's
amazing. I want to see some of your work.
well, you know what's so funny, Kristen, is when I was thinking of this too, is that a lot of times it would come out during like a breakup or like heartbreak would create poetry
Oh,
for me.
uh-huh.
So I don't
Yes.
know if you can relate to that, but for me, like writing usually comes out of a sad place. Not always, but a lot of it did,
Totally. Oh
especially
my
when I was
gosh.
younger. And so for me, like with the Boston Marathon bombing, it turned into a song. So I've been doing songwriting.
Oh, that's
But
amazing.
that's why I'm
Oh
so
my
happy
God.
to be talking to you because it's like I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of us out there that writing is such an intimate part of our lives, but
Right.
we don't necessarily. And I've written a nonfiction book, but the truth is, I never really marketed it. I think it's I got a lot of great feedback on it or whatever, but it's like to really own your place as a writer and to want
Right.
to share that vulnerability with others. And I think poetry specifically is so deeply intimate. So
It
I'm
is.
just curious if what your thoughts on that, and did you do research or like I said, did you just kind of put it out there?
Yeah, I did. So in the book proposal for Grace and Oak, because we still had to do a book proposal, obviously, for the poetry book,
Yeah.
poetry photography book. So I did do within that, I did do some research about, okay, like what's out on the market right now.
Mm.
And obviously there's some big names like Cleo Wade,
Yeah,
has a lot of
sure.
poetry books. Like, so she was a big inspiration of like, okay, like there is a market for this,
Mm.
and the other thing is I wanted the poems to be accessible because some
Yeah.
poetry I feel like you're like, wow, I think this is really amazing, but I don't know what it means.
Totally. You wanted it to be
Totally.
right, because I
Yeah.
feel like with poets, um, most of the ones that we think of, were like the 1800s or like early
Right.
1900s, right? Emily Dickinson, Robert Frost,
Exactly.
Edgar Allan Poe, like people, who are still being quoted to this day. But I love that. I didn't know about Cleo Wade. I saw her on, I think you had posted something she wrote on your Instagram. And so
Oh,
that's how
uh-huh.
I discovered her. But I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is great to see that there's a
Yes.
modern telling of, modern representation of poetry now.
Absolutely. And I think I was always intimidated by sharing poetry or calling myself a poet before this whole
Sure.
endeavor because I just thought, like, oh, I don't write like that. I don't write that really in that way that leaves people like, oh, I wonder what this means. Like
Mm.
mine is very like you can understand what I'm saying,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And I think that as long as you're making people feel a certain way,
Mm.
I think that's poetry. And I've talked to a lot of different people about this. And if you are evoking emotion in a reader, like that is poetry. So it doesn't have to be something so complicated, or you don't have to have a lot of training. If you are just writing words in a certain order, that makes a difference and makes people feel something they haven't felt before, or think about something they haven't thought about before, then I really think that you are a poet. And so I kind of, that's what I tell myself at least. No,
No, you have your
no,
book out and it's
no,
being
I know.
represented, of course.
No, I know. So I kind of had to tell myself these things to be like, it's okay. And people, I have gotten such great feedback on it. And obviously we did find an amazing publisher with Dover Publications.
Nice.
I just can't say enough things about our experience with Dover bringing this
Mm.
whole book to life. And they've been
Oh,
so receptive to this project and helping us make it exactly how we wanted. Because a lot of publishers, when it gets in their hands, they kind of lead the way in ideas
right.
and trying to steer it in certain directions. And our editor Fiona, she just has gone to bat to it for us over and over again, and it's exactly how we wanted it to be. So anyways, I'm just so excited to share this book. Yeah.
And I'm so excited for you. Now, did you ever take a poetry class? Because you talked about structure. So I like the way you defined poetry, that it's something that
Yes.
evokes emotion,
Mhm.
but does it actually follow, like in terms of, if you were to take a poetry course,
Oh, right.
there's so
Mhm.
many different kinds of poetry. Does it fall within any of that, or is it just more very heart-centered poetry?
So it's mostly just very heart-centered soul poetry.
Yeah.
I do have a couple of haikus in
Yeah.
there,
Mhm.
which is a structured form, but mostly it's free verse, which just gives you all the freedom in the world,
I
basically.
love that. And what's your creative
Yeah.
process? Like how to create the book? Did you sit down every day? What did that look like?
Yes. So obviously, you're given a deadline when you sign the contract to the publisher. So then it becomes I always get nervous because my writing is very like I have to be in the mood, especially with the
Mm-hmm.
poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh, great. Now I have a deadline. Now I have to always be in the mood to write stuff like this. So music really actually helped get me to a certain place where I could communicate what I wanted to say on paper. So I would listen to, a bunch of different playlists I had that like helped me get to the place that I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
A particular genre of music? I'm just curious what invoked the
yeah,
feeling.
you know
Yeah.
what? You know what's funny? I don't think I'm a hipster at all.
Mm-hmm.
But on Pandora, it's called hipster playlist. Or no. It's called wait, I have to think about it. I have to think of the right name. It's like chill hipster. I
Uh-huh.
forget. It's kind of like soothing music, but it like I like the lyrics of the songs a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
They're very like soul focused, which
Yeah.
that kind of helped me. But
Mhm.
it's just my husband makes fun of me. He's like, because I'm not really a hipster at all. Um, but anyway, so music helped a lot, and then yeah, it had to become a habit. So every day my kids went to school, I sat down at my desk and I was like, you're going to knock out 3 poems today. Like, it's just, you have to set goals and you just have to do it.
Wow.
And, yeah, that's how I just kind of chugged through. And I mean, and then with this book, it was a whole other element because then we had to pair the poems with the
Mhm.
photographs.
Totally.
So it was like, and Meg, she's up in the Bay Area. So she's taking like these really beautiful photographs, which I can't wait for you guys to see. They're just so gorgeous.
I can't wait.
And so we would go back and forth. I would send her some of my poems. She would send me some of her photos. So it kind of worked back and forth where sometimes she'd send me photos and I'd think, oh, I have a great idea for a poem that would go with this. Or sometimes I would send her poems and she'd be like, okay, I'm going to go shoot my interpretation of this.
Mm.
So it really was a great collaboration that way. And then towards the end, right before the deadline, we actually met in Santa Monica in the middle, and we sat down and paired all the poems together and all the
Wow.
photos together. And it
So
was just, yeah,
cool.
it was really, it was a kind of crazy day because it was a lot of work. But we're just so happy with the final product.
I love this. So, I'm realizing though, so I jumped a little bit though, because when we were talking about Tribe, you sold that, right? So at some
I
point you
did.
decided to close the door on that. And was it
Did.
when you decided when you got your publisher and were working on the book, like it was like, okay, this is the next step, and then the poetry was the next step? I'm just curious about the
Yes.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, so I sold Tribe Magazine a little over a year ago,
Hmm.
and I think I think honestly, I just worn myself out about writing about motherhood.
Mm.
I just, you kind of get to the point where you're like, I've said everything I need to say, or uh, and so I just thought, I want this to go on, you know, I want the site to live on, but I just think that, I am going to focus my attention in another direction. So I did sell the site and the spinoff networking group here in San Diego to some wonderful moms here who keep it
Mm.
alive,
Awesome.
and they're growing it still. So that's so great to see that continue on. And then I thought my next project was going to be a novel.
Mm.
So I always wanted to write fiction.
Hmm.
So and then as I was doing that, I was kind of, putting my little poems out there. And then I had that kind of overwhelming moment of, oh no, this needs to be your next project, this poetry book.
Hmm.
And so I kind of have veered off in a different direction. So yeah, it's just funny where life takes you and because you can plan all day about your next steps, but
Hmm.
then I just think when inspiration hits you in a certain direction, you have to go with that wave,
The muse has called.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. And
you're
that's really
answering
what
the
it
call
felt
of the
like.
muse. I love that. But so I think
Absolutely.
there are going to be women wondering though, can you make a career out of being a writer? Um,
Yeah.
is that a possibility and is it is it enough of a to actually make a living
Right.
on? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So I think if I wanted to make more money and like just like a day to day, like have a career out of writing, I think you absolutely can. Um, I would say, find some big publications that pay for articles and contributors,
Mhm.
and I would submit to those as much as possible. And you can get full-time positions doing things like that, or even part-time positions. So there's many different routes you can go. And I know some women who were stay-at-home moms and then they became editors. So it just depends on kind of what direction in the writing world you want to go. Obviously, you can try to write books and get book deals. And it just depends on the sites you're working or you're writing for, and kind of like the book deals you're getting it to determine your salary and things like that. Because it's such a wide, it varies so much. So it's just, I guess I would really say, really think about what's your goal. Like, is your goal to make money? Then I would, really try to get like a full-time writing position with a larger site, or be like a regular contributor to something. I would really go that direction. If it's more just like a part-time thing, then, maybe you're starting your own website. Maybe you're, still contributing to other sites, but it's not as full-time. So I don't know. It just depends so much on what you want your end goal to be.
And what's your goal with your writing? How do you see it as part of your life? Is it something that you see that you want to make a career out of, where you can live on it? Or is it just a part of you that needs to be expressed, or maybe a combination?
I think it's a combination. It's definitely a part of me that needs to be expressed, and I only will do projects that I truly, feel passionate about. So I guess to me, if I'm choosing, making a ton of money or a passion project, then I'm going the passion route. And I'm lucky to be making money in that route. But I think for me, I've realized that I like to write books. Like, I've now that I've gone through this process twice, and I'm an author. I just think like I'm an author, and I need to think about it now as, okay, what's my next book going to be, and what's the next project? So like that's what really excites me, and that's the direction that I'm heading in. And I do still want to write that novel that's been on my list to do. So I think that's going to be my next project after Grace and Oak. But of course, as we all know, things change, and who knows if I'll get hit with another kind of inspirational wave in a different direction. So I guess we'll just see. But I know for sure that I just want to continue writing books.
Yeah, I love that. And tell us about the community building. So, that obviously is going to be important for you with the release of your latest book, Grace and Oak, right? So,
Yes.
even though you have a traditional publisher, you still have to do a lot of the marketing yourself. So, can you tell us about just some advice about developing community?
Absolutely. I think obviously, social media is still so big, and it's also so difficult with the algorithms, and there's so many different factors now, and just hoping that people see your work. But I think, as long as you're just posting about your journey as a writer and your new projects, and really connecting with other writers and other creatives in the space who are also going to help spread the word about you, I think that's so important. And just building those really strong relationships in the industry. I've met so many wonderful mom writers on Instagram, and poetry writers as well. So it's been really great to connect with this community. And that's been helpful. And then I also think just, again, submitting your work to bigger publications. I always think that's extremely important whenever you're launching a book as well. So right now I'm submitting a bunch of poems to large poetry publications. And so, you'll start seeing a lot of my stuff being published on different sites. And I just think as many different avenues as you can take to reach different people, that's really helpful.
And so good. And so, any resources? You've listed a couple already, the Submittable and
Yes.
what was, oh yeah, no, I
Oh,
think,
creative,
what was
creative
the,
nonfiction.
yeah, I'm going to write that one down. And then anything else, like in terms of, do you go to writers' conferences or anything like that? Or how do you like any other resources you'd recommend?
I haven't gone to any recent writers conferences, although if any come to town, I'm always wanting to do that. I am looking more into, there are a bunch of local bookshops that they host an open mic night for poets. And so that's kind of my next goal, is to start going to some of those and kind of conquering my fear too, because I really don't like public speaking. But I am going to start, trying to read some of my stuff at these open mic nights. And, again, it's important, I think, to familiarize yourself with the local community and have connections with the local community and then kind of spread outwards, obviously nationally and all over the world if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's kind of another avenue. But I would always just say, whatever niche you're in, just saturate yourself in that space.
Yeah.
Just really reach out and expand your network.
Yeah, that's great advice. And for somebody starting out on social or, want to develop that online presence, whether through a blog or through something like Facebook or Instagram or even Pinterest, where do you think they need to be? And, you already talked about, I guess, really just sharing about your journey as the way of connecting. Is that what you've found has been the
I think
most
I think
beneficial? Yeah.
definitely. And I think that the more you humanize yourself, I mean, obviously you are human. So if you're I just think if you're always just like showing the business side of it,
Yeah.
people won't relate to you on a deeper level. So it's really showing like behind the scenes and being vulnerable and saying, I've been rejected. Oh, I keep getting rejected, showing the process of it's not always roses,
Mhm.
in this industry. And
Yeah.
you go through the ups and downs, but then sharing your wins so people root for you and also, lifting each other up. That's really
Mhm.
important to me and if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I really feel passionate about sharing other writers' work, sharing
Mhm.
other writers' wins. Um, I just think if we lift each other up, then we're
Mhm.
all helping each other grow and there's room for everyone. And, um, I just really love connecting and helping support other women on a similar path.
Beautifully said, and 100% agree with you and live from that place, so I love that.
Yes, I
Um,
know you're a perfect example of that.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you. Well, that's why it's such a honor for me to be able to share, stories like yours with other women, and I think that the audience, like, I always think, like, people say, "Oh, you have such fascinating guests." I'm like, if I met the women who are listening, I know that their stories would be fascinating too, because we all have a
Right.
story to tell.
Everyone does.
Everyone
Absolutely.
does.
Yeah.
And so to the degree somebody hears this though and goes, "Oh, you know what? I'm gonna have the courage to put myself out there too. It's
Yes.
okay. I need to do this." Okay, so Kristen, how do you define success?
I define success. I think if you can work on something that you're passionate about every day,
Mm,
even if it's not your full time job. If you can just find, like, if you can take an hour every day and just work on something that you're truly passionate about. So if you work a 9 to 5 and then you come home and you write poetry for an hour or whatever your thing is, then that to me is success because you have to feed that you have inside of you, whatever kind of lights your soul on fire. So I really believe in that.
and do you have a morning routine that fosters your success or evening? Do you have any habits that help you?
It's so funny. I'm not a morning person at all, but I am a night owl.
Uh-huh.
So coffee in the morning is helpful for me. But in the evenings, I have to write. So I write
Mm,
every single day, and even if it's one sentence, like if I can form like a really great sentence, like then I'm like, okay, that's enough. And
mhm.
obviously some nights I'm writing chapters and a lot more. But if I can just write every single day, that just keeps me going and it forms a habit. So I think just showing up, to do the work, even if it's not a lot or even if it feels not great,
Mm.
I think that's super important.
Love it. What advice do you think your 80-year-old self would give you about living a good life? What do you think she'd tell you?
Oh gosh, I think she'd probably say, take chances on yourself. Um, you know, I just think a lot of my dreams of like becoming a published author would have never come to fruition if I didn't take a chance on myself
Mm,
and I didn't find the courage to just go for it.
mhm,
So definitely take chance on yourself. I'd say also channel grace through every
mhm,
circumstance. Um, I had a really great mentor in when I worked in the corporate world, and she gave me this quote that's one of my favorite quotes, but it says, "Grace, it's how you accept winning and losing, the darkness and the light."
mm,
So there's going to be dark times, there's going to be light times, you're going to be winning, you're going to be losing, but if you can just channel grace through that, through all of
mhm.
it, then you're going to have a great life.
Beautiful. And can you leave the women listening with your 3 best tips for living a good life?
Um, I would say, you know, be kind. I always think, whether you're a billionaire, making so much money or you're just barely getting by, if you are just exude kindness
Mhm.
to the world or to other people in the world around you, the universe is going to show that back to you. And I really believe that.
Mm.
So that's something that I always try to live by. And then also just, and we talked about this too, like lifting the women up around you,
Mhm.
because when we lift each other up, we all rise. And so really just, not obviously focusing on lifting yourself up and doing things for your own success, but really looking around and thinking, how can I lift up the women around me and really build this community around me and keep, on the road to success. And I think, also just, if there's something inside of you that's speaking to you, for me, like this poetry book, which was completely not on my list of things to do, but if
Mhm.
there's something that's just calling to you and you really think about it and it just that idea doesn't go away, like I really feel that that's your purpose
Mhm.
and something that you need to tune into and explore and just, always listen to your gut feelings, and things that light you up because you can't go wrong.
Love that. Thank you. And where can people learn more about you and your books, Kristen? Where can I direct them?
Yes, so you can. So my website is kristinhelms.com, and Grace and Oak is up for pre-order now on
Yay.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, indiebound.com. So wherever you buy books, you can pre-order it there. And my publisher, Dover Publications, they're actually running a special now that if you pre-order it through February, you also get 3 free printables
Oh,
that you can frame, and they're poems with poems that I wrote with Meg's photos that you can frame, and they're just like inspirational to put on your desk or
nice.
yeah, wherever you'd like. So
Congrats. I'm so excited for you, and I can't wait to get a copy of the book. I'm so excited. I will go right
yes,
now and pre-order my copy.
oh
And
my gosh,
I wish you so much success, and hopefully you'll come back on when you've written your novel. We'll do a part 2.
yes, oh my gosh, I would love that, Michelle. Thank you so much. You're so lovely to talk to, and I love following you on Instagram too, and you're just doing such great work of bringing all these stories to life. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, such a pleasure to have you and such an honor. Thanks, Kristen.
All right, thanks, Michelle.
For those of you out there who want to become a writer, a published author, have work that you want to put out in the world, I really hope that today's conversation was useful for you. All of the show notes can be found over at thegoodlifecoach.com, and all of the resources that Kristen mentioned will be there as well. I personally was really inspired by her story and loved what she shared. So if you know of someone else who would find today's information useful, please take a second to forward the conversation. Now, if you've yet to subscribe to the podcast, you can do that on your favorite podcast player. Just hit the subscribe button. And if you're feeling extra generous, please take a second to rate and review the show. It means so much to me. I read all of the reviews, and it helps me know what's resonating with you, and it actually helps other women find the podcast, which is really my intention for 2020, to provide as much inspiration and actionable tips and show what's possible for any of you out there who has a dream in your heart that you want to make a reality. So thank you as always for tuning in. I so appreciate your time, and I look forward to reconnecting with you next Wednesday. Bye for now.